Oh. Okay, Tess? Okay. This is the Seldovia Planning Commission meeting, and it is 6:01, and the meeting is called to order. Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Commissioner Rogers absent. Commissioner Sweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Forsberg,
Here.
and Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2nd meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Kroll. Can I have a second?
Yes, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsberg.
Okay, this is for a motion to approve the agenda. Commissioner Sweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Forsberg,
Yep.
and Commissioner Kroll.
Yeah.
Okay, motion passes 3-0 with one absent.
And now, if we could have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 2nd commission meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from the.
Thank you, Commissioner Kroll. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsberg.
All right, Commissioner Sweet
Yes.
and Commissioner Forsberg
Yes.
and Commissioner Kroll.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed 3-0 with one absent.
And the next item is item E, public comments regarding items not on the agenda. Are there any comments?
We don't have any members of the public at this time.
And there is no public hearing, item F, prior notice, is that correct?
That's correct, as well as no site plans.
Okay. And so that brings us to item H, commission business, draft changes to building permit application. And so I'll turn that over to staff. And the information about this item is on starting on page 8 in the packet.
Thank you. So what we did at the last meeting, we had discussed putting a draft change into the building permit application and you can see that change, the application itself starts on 8, but those changes are on page 12. And I highlighted them, but since it's in black and white, it just kind of comes up as gray. So those are the highlighted changes, kind of to go along with the discussion of potential impact to adjoining properties. And so you'll see I've added in question number 4. Will this project require additional permitting? Which is something we've wanted to put on there anyway, due to the Kenai River Center permitting process. And then number 5 is, does this project have the potential to impact adjoining properties, i.e. a change in topography, stormwater drainage, retaining walls, etc.? And if yes, what is the potential impact? And what measures are in place to mitigate potential impacts? So that's what's been added. The rest of it is just kind of renumbering the questions. And appreciate any feedback or start the discussion on if you think that's the direction that the commission wants to go. That's kind of just a starting point for the discussion on those changes. And I don't know, if you have anything to add?
Just for administrative wise, I realize that we still need to update the fee on the page at the beginning of the application because it changed for FY24. So we can do that as well as the revision date at the bottom. And one thing in just reviewing it that I noticed and something that Clerk Diamond was still going to work on was a sample to go into the packet. But one thing I also noticed that might be helpful is on this, I like how the building permit application required drawings is laid out, but maybe we can add a little language to make it clear. And then on page 7, having those requirements, the actual lot size, location of proposed construction, dimensions of all buildings, maybe that can also be a sign off, an initial, where people are double checking their work. Like, please initial that you have included these things. I don't know, it's just something I thought of this afternoon when looking at it. As a suggestion.
Yeah, and I think anything to make the process clearer for people, it's always a good thing.
So, do the commissioners have any feedback on the, proposed materials?
So these changes are already in place.
These are just draft changes that we made based on the discussion from last week, and then a couple of administrative changes just to kind of put that potential impact to neighboring properties somewhere on the application. And so this was a draft that City Manager Gagel and I came up with to kind of address that concern. And so we just kind of want the feedback from the commissioners if this does address that concern, and any other clarifications or changes in wording or anything else you might think would be helpful for that.
So we need to approve these, or the city does, or I mean, the city council?
I mean, the commissioners would want to, approve the changes. And this is just a starting point if there's language you want to change on it.
It's good.
Commissioner Cole, do you have any feedback?
All those changes seem reasonable.
So so there were changes that are in here and then changes that you just mentioned, so kind of given the, given that, so we can approve. Oh, I apologize. So the changes that have been discussed, there are some that are in place, and sounds like there's a consensus from the commission that those are good. And then there was some sort of continuous improvement kinds of things that you had just mentioned, and that those would go ahead and those would be done. So as a commission, we could approve the ones that are in place, and any continuous improvement items that you see as being helpful to the public in making these change in applying for and using the building permit application, we can go ahead and just ask that you do that. That way it's not down to the detail level, but it's kind of giving you the strategic direction to go forward.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So, and did you all have anything else that you wanted to say before we went forward with the motion?
As an aside to this, I guess I have an administrative question on what would be the recommended process if somebody did answer yes to potential impact? Is there a recommended process that you guys would like to see, or would you like to keep it administrative? That would be an ordinance change potentially that we'd put out, public notice to the surrounding area. It could come to a planning commission meeting. It could still just be administrative, but we have an eye for that. I mean, I'm not sure what the vision is there, but I think there are plenty of options. If you guys wanted to discuss how, what you would like to see happen if there is the potential impact.
Any feedback from the commissioners on that?
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea as far as if somebody does have a problem, it's got to be answered somehow, or somebody's got to figure out what to do, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, so some of the practices we already have in place is like the conditional use or the variance permit, which require notice to property owners within 300 feet of the property where the construction or the item is taking place. And then it comes to a public meeting with the commission, so that those individuals in the neighboring area, if they have comment, they have opportunity to provide it written or orally. So
That would kind of leverage, that would kind of leverage the existing way we do things. And so this could just fit into existing sort of process.
I think so, if that's something you guys wanted to explore. And so we would amend the ordinance for building permits stating that they are done administratively unless there's a potential for an adverse impact. And then that would come to a planning commission meeting with notice to neighboring property owners.
So that would kind of let normal things that are just normal, sort of a normal business process, it would be fine. And then if there was something that needed a little more conversation, that way it would trigger that conversation. And then it would be, then once that was done, then whatever information was surfaced from that would help direct what might need to be done.
Yes, I could see that. And then it would, you'd also have to define then what adverse impact would be, and that would be part of the ordinance change, so that there was a clear definition of what it was that people are looking for, that would trigger that response.
Okay. And so is that something that the staff could look at, what those types of things might be?
Mhm.
And then have something proposed in terms of what the adjustment to the ordinance might look like?
Sure. We can do that.
And so kind of step one would be to say, yes, proceed with the form with the proposed changes and any additional continuous improvements to it that you're seeing that need to be done. And then step two would be coming back to the commission with a proposed ordinance change.
Mhm. Yes, if that's the
Yeah,
path
I
that you
mean,
guys want to.
just that way it kind of.
Yeah.
We're laying the groundwork and then we're building to meet that specific.
Exactly.
issue.
What's the follow through? Exactly.
Okay. So, so then, any other comments or, questions from the staff or the commissioners?
Like that person that does have a problem with it and he's not satisfied, what happens then?
That's a great question. I mean, I guess if they had cause or reason, it would depend on what the grievance was, but potentially if it doesn't, I mean, it's like any building permit, we're not going to deny a building permit administratively that meets all requirements. So I think maybe it's just to allow more awareness, and more public input. And then should something be discovered, that could not meet a requirement, then there's other paths like a conditional use or a variance, or potentially a project would be denied if it didn't meet all the requirements of the application. That's a great question. I don't know if you guys want to discuss that further, but we're kind of bound by the ordinances and consistency and transparency and trying to make sure that same set of rules for everybody.
So that person, what would the permit get delayed? Or is that in there, as far as finding an answer?
So right now, the permits typically take 3 to 5 weeks. So it'd probably be a pretty similar timeline.
I guess, so the kind of problem resolution would kind of look like the person would raise an issue and then whoever was doing the project would then, if they were able to say, yes, we understand that, and this is being mitigated by, let's say it's being mitigated by a retaining wall and and there's been a whatever the study by a, professional engineer.
Mhm.
And so that is meeting the requirements of the law and helping to mitigate the condition. So that would be the type of conversation
Mhm.
that would be, it's not meant to, I think it's not meant to stop anything. It's just meant to confirm that, yes, there is a possibility for a risk and there is something that's been done to mitigate that risk. And so the neighbor could be, feel good about the fact that that's being done and their issue is being addressed. So I think if that helps.
Yeah.
So any further discussion? And so, what I would propose, what I would ask for is the motion to, update the, building permit, with the suggestions that have been provided and any continuous improvement, items that the staff notes. So could I have a motion to that effect?
Make a motion to advance that.
Could I have a second?
Seconded.
Would you like me to restate it or? Okay. So the motion is to approve the updates to the building permit with the suggestions that have been provided and any continuous improvement items that the staff notes. Commissioner Sweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Forsberg,
Yes.
and Commissioner Kroll.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passed with 3 yes and 1 absent.
And then I had a question. Should we also have a motion on asking for proposed ordinance change to include the, if the definition of an adverse condition? Or should we wait until the?
I think we can just do that with direction. We'll come back with
Okay.
the recommendations and
Alright.
then you can vote on whether to advance that to council once we have those recommendations.
All right. Then I think then we've covered that H1, and so we're good to go to item H2, which is land use management plan recommended updates. And I'll turn that over to the staff.
Yes, thank you. So we have, was last year in May, city council passed the first ever, first official, right? Land use management plan for an overall outlook and detail specific about the city's use of its properties. And so part of that is an annual revision and updates. So this is kind of the first step in that. The plan is 198 pages, so I did not print out the whole thing. But there was a link to it and I can screen share the whole plan if you like, but there is a memo kind of detailing some changes that were recommended by City Manager Gagel, as well as some changes, just are updating like the current status of the leases and sales for that. So on page 16 is that memo, and there are 2 future consideration goals that I talked about adding to were the long-term maintenance of community trails. And I don't know if we want to keep this one in the minimum of a 5-acre parcel for sewage lagoon wastewater treatment facility. That's still. And then on page 26 is the city land currently available for lease or sale. And that is just kind of updated to reflect current leases. So long-term leases for Seldovia space, the renewed leases for the AMHS ferry dock and office space for CISPRI and for SOS. And the parcel lot number 192019007 was for lease, but it's been updated because it's now leased by CISPRI and is no longer listed for lease. And the other one was just a title change for the sewer main map to sewer system overview map. And ones that we're still working on are adding in a map of the fire hydrant and updating the Seldovia snow removal map, which we need to wait for operator Cameron to weigh in on. So those are kind of the changes that we've recommended so far. And I can pull up, let me go ahead and share the full plan. And so this is kind of just to start thinking about some other considerations that might want to update within that plan. So give me a moment here and I'll pull that up. Okay, so the first page of this is the resolution that it was passed with. And on there, and we'll have the table of contents and then. Oops. This is kind of just the introduction and overview of the plan. So we can scroll through it, but this is the first kind of change item is these are what are listed as the future consideration and goals right now. So I think that's kind of a good first page to look at. And so, and this is where.
You're doing great.
So this is where we were adding in the 5 acres. Parcel for a sewage lagoon as well as I think it was maintenance of trails. The Rocky Ridge Trail, which is a city trail, and then I'm not sure if the Otterbahn is not. And any other future consideration or goals that the commission might think is relevant to pass on as recommendations to the council.
So do the commissioners have any, do you have any feedback on the sort of future considerations or any comments on the proposed additions to the considerations and goals?
Just as a quick overview, if you look, and you don't have to have the answers tonight, we can bring it back as well with the additional changes. But if you look through the land use management plan, and we do have a printed copy here for anybody who wants to borrow it or look through it. It does list every single city parcel, and then it gives as much history as we have available, and a description of it, as well as any improvements or infrastructure that's on it. And future consideration and recommendations. The parcels themselves, I don't see changing anytime soon unless we sell or purchase. And the leases are kind of where they are right now, unless more land opens up that's available for lease. So really, I think the request from the commission would be to kind of just do an overview and see that those future recommendations for overall for the city and for the properties really meet the needs and the desire where the city is going. I heard somebody mention, and I thought it was really a fantastic idea to make sure that the districts are developed with intention. You know, what is the intent of the industrial district? And you can see that the city has quite a few properties in the industrial zone. So maybe they're not being utilized to their fullest. Maybe there's other things we can do. And anything that comes out of here is not anything that's in this plan is not saying it's a working plan. It's not saying that that has to happen. Obviously, changes have already occurred since the inception of the plan, but I think it's a great guide for future generations. And as we go through these processes to say, you know, what is the vision for the lots? We have a few parcels next to the city storage yard that are partial wetlands right now that aren't developed. What is the future of those lots? I've heard they could be developed for affordable housing. They could be preserved as wetlands and have bird trail, you know, a walking path that goes through it. Definitely, there's been requests from a few members of the public to see more green space and more designated recreational areas such as that. You know, just looking at, I mean, some of them outside beach, RV park are going to stay where they are, but we have or probably stay the way they are because of the way that they're deeded. And you can see at the beginning of every section, there's a list of those properties, and it will tell you on that list. Let's see here, I'll pull it up just to give you kind of an overview. It will tell you on that list. Nope, I guess I'm wrong. So there's the leases, then there's the easements. And then there's a land use overview at the very beginning of all of the sections with all the properties. And it has recommended status potential, development, or disposal, or dedicated. You know, the ones with dedicated already have a public purpose, or they're restricted by deed. There's reasons why we have to keep them, a lot of them, but that's a really great guide, to look through as you're looking through the properties. And I know this can be daunting because it's a big plan, but I think that that's really the request of the overview, is just to see that those future considerations are the direction that the city, you know, is it a plausible, feasible direction? Are there more things to consider? Are there changes needed? So overall considerations for the city, and then just the future considerations for each parcel, if you guys are up for it.
So is it like, perhaps if the commissioner members can look, this is available online, I'm thinking, and so we can look at it, and if there, and perhaps we could have an agenda item to just any feedback that the commissioners have at our next planning commission meeting, then we could provide those to you, and then at least you're getting some feedback that's specific to the plan. I do have a couple of questions on, so adding the long-term maintenance of community trails is one recommendation. So how does that, let's say that's a goal, but then what are the specifics behind that goal? Do we have a budget that goes along with that? Do we have a plan, or do we need to make a plan? So if we think that having maintenance of community trails, then do we as a commission, for example, say, we think that's a great idea? Can the city create a plan, you know, whether it's looking for grants, whatever it is, but how do we go from a goal to execution in terms of actually having something specific that's, you know, measurable and actually occurs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I could see this being utilized, and we haven't been utilizing it to its full potential, especially hearing your comment, because I think that it's a great tool that can be utilized on all sorts of fronts, but even on a council front, they're in discussion right now about their capital improvement plan. And so being able to look at the future considerations that are in the land use management plan should definitely be part of that conversation, as well as council priorities moving forward. And that's something that the council has done for the last 2 years, and I think will continue on indefinitely is that they set council priorities annually that kind of gives the direction for staff time and budget and resources to go towards those focuses. And potentially if that was something that the commission wanted on their level, if there are projects, I know affordable housing is one that's come up recently. If trails, if there's things, directions that you'd like to see staff have an emphasis on, that would then go up to the council level once it was ready. I'm just brainstorming here. I
Right.
think that there are definitely ways to see these plans move forward. We do have to prioritize. That's the big word, because there are so few of us and
Right.
we have a lot to accomplish, but I could see that being beneficial if there was a specific direction that the commission really wanted to see us focus on.
So perhaps if the commissioners would concur, we could, look at the land use plan, and then if you think about the things that have been talked about and what your thoughts are on priorities, then perhaps we could actually speak to those, and then those could go forward to the city council. But that, understanding that, we're not going to have 72 priorities, but we may want to say, well, we really think this is X and Y are two things that are really important in terms of the priorities that we would identify as important to our community.
That would be great. And
Um,
we could even put that in the plan, that those are like the top priorities in the plan.
I guess I also had a question on the minimum 5-acre parcel for the sewage lagoon. I know where there's grant funding, there's there's a variety of things that are underway with that. Is looking for money for, I guess one question I have is, does that mean that the city would need to purchase a 5-acre parcel of land, or do we already have a 5-acre parcel that we could use for this? What does this kind of signify?
Through the chair. So that is, we did receive an intent to award for a new sewer treatment facility, which would be a lagoon located outside of city limits. And they have already identified, we have a preliminary engineering report that's 95% complete, which is huge. That's kind of what pushes forward the funding, and it recommends a few areas, but the number one recommendation at this time is a parcel. It's a borough parcel that we could utilize next to the Rocky Ridge landfill. That's just a recommendation. I don't actually know how that's going to turn out or if that'll be feasible. But in order to move forward with this funding, we will need a space, whether that means the borough lets us, or we lease, or there's somebody else we can lease from, or we have to purchase. That would all be part of the grant funding. So that's something that we have an eye on, that is a need, and it may be something that just works out through the grant process and we don't have to stress about it too much, or it may be something where we're really searching to find the right parcel to purchase. But it would be grant funding. Or should be, I hope.
Any feedback from the commissioners?
So what's the condition of the old one? Wasn't that starting to get needed work? So is it gonna, to find a new one, is there a time thing on it or anything, or what?
For the sewer,
Yeah.
septic.
The old one kind of needed servicing?
Yes, so we have an existing septic system in town, located by Inside Beach, and there's an outfall line that it flows out to Inside Beach. And it hasn't been pumped since the 90s. It's in pretty bad shape. And so that's part of the plan, is they're going to rehabilitate, they're going to empty and rehabilitate that tank in the meantime while they work. This is the sewer treatment facility lagoon is probably a 7 to 10 year project at least. So in the meantime, they will work on outfitting and updating that current existing system so that it can get us through for a few more years, is the plan.
Well, and then also there'll probably be some issues if somebody is gonna live next to that lagoon too, or is that all kind of wilderness area or around it?
Yes, for the out the road location, that's definitely a consideration as the neighboring properties. And then, of course, it will have an outfall line as well that will go out into the bay there. So that's why it's all hypothetical at this point. Who knows how it's gonna shake out, but that's the recommendation for the preliminary engineering report. So we'll see what ends up being feasible. But the council had two options, and one was to outfit the current existing septic tank and update it enough to continue to be able to handle the next 10-20 years, or to build a lagoon out the road. There was actually 5 options, but those were the two that were focused on, the most viable, and the ones the council focused on. And it came down to we continually annually have the same issues with our lift stations, our outhouses, individuals in the community, anybody who needs pumped. There's only a very limited pumping capacity in Lagoon through SNA, and part of the new treatment, the part of the updated septic tank system would be a requirement that we would pump that every month. And it's a less feasible option to be able to pump and dump that tank monthly, which would mean a barge, because the ferry, as far as I understand, won't accept full trucks going over. So barging waste back and forth monthly or every couple of months to maintain that tank. It's just the same issue we're in now, which is no place to pump, and Lagoon gives us that affordability, hopefully, moving forward in the future.
Was one of the options, pack it in, pack it out?
Not if you're coming on the ferry. But even, houses, right now we're doing maintenance on our lift station, and we need to pump out the bottom of the lift station, and we have no place for that sludge to go. So it's an overall problem of where does it go?
And the town's growing.
And the town's growing. So long story short, it's a little bit more expensive, and of course that's going to end up back on the customers in the future. So that's something, 7 to 10 year plan, but that's something that council is very aware of, and when they made that decision. So not to end on a sour note, but since we're having this discussion, just the more community awareness we have, I think the better, because they were anticipating and $2022 that it'd be potentially a $30 increase on the sewer bill just to maintain that facility. I don't know how it'll shake out in the end. The work being done is free, not free, but it's grant money. But the operations and maintenance of a lagoon like that is going to be so a little bit more than to maintain and pump potentially the tank, but that really depends on barging, what that's going to cost. So I think that's something that the city wants to be very transparent with and have an educational campaign moving forward, because it's really hard whenever we start talking about increasing rates.
Well, and then, the current fees have been the same for quite a while. Right?
Well, they've gone up recently in the last 8 years to where they should be right now. We're holding pretty steady, but to do any kind of new infrastructure, that means increased rates.
So this is just an action item for commission members to review the land use plan in advance of the next meeting and provide feedback at the next commission meeting on the future considerations and goals.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sweet. And I mean, if commission members also want to send recommendations by email, like they can send it to me as well.
We'll talk about it and stuff that way, at least whatever your thoughts are, that way staff will have that. But this is still on my staff reports.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sweet. So the first one we have on there is building permits, and we just kind of noted that we've had 11 approved overall in fiscal year 23, and we have one pending, which is the Seldovia Village Tribe dock rehab project. But I'll skip down to number 3, like the planning webpage future updates are planning to have figure out a method to have those permits up on the website for people to look at, so that we do have a more in-depth report kind of available to the public who want it as to what permits are in process and where. And I guess we'll go, and then does anybody have any questions about the building permits at this point? We're kind of nearing the end of the season, so they're gonna slow down.
That is. Again, for the dock permit, is that something that's going to happen imminently, like within the next bit of time? I noticed there's a barge out in the
Yeah, so
port
the
area.
the start date for their permit they listed as October 1st.
Okay.
So and they have begun, I think, pulling out the pilings for that were in there as well. So they are kind of doing that piece of it right now.
And so the is it a dock replacement? Is that what the project is, or is it the removal? Is it the dismantling? Was it like step 1 dismantling of the existing dock?
So it looks like the piece that connects to the shore
Mhm.
is going to stay in place, and then they're going to put in a new dock that is perpendicular instead of going straight out. So that's their
So
current
they're
plan.
redesigning the dock for better use, or
Yeah.
it's an improvement with what they were having problems with the old dock, and so the new dock is being redesigned to better meet their needs.
Yes. Do you have any more information? Yeah. So instead of going straight out, the dock is going to be the same direction as the city dock.
Okay.
And so they're
So
going to,
we'll know more there. When you're saying it's pending, they haven't yet submitted the entire, or the permit, or they're in they're kind of.
we have the permit application and just waiting for some of the updated Army Corps and other permits that
Okay.
they have to send to us. But looks like most of the construction will be not on the land part of it. There will be a little bit, but most will be in the water, and that's on a tied lands lot that they own.
And that's under Corps of Engineer.
I think it's,
Authority, so there's not much that's being, what I'm hearing you say is there's not much being done on land, and so it's just it's more a coordination of what's going on, so that everybody's understanding what's happening, and they're working with the different authorities to make sure they've got everything set up so they can do the work.
Yeah, and so it goes through two lots. One is a land one, and then one is a tidelands lot. One is submerged. So what we're still waiting for on the application is just a little bit more explanation of what that part is on the part that's on land, where that falls. But
Have they got a picture of what it's gonna look like? I'm just kind of curious.
yeah, there is a diagram with the permit package, and I can provide that to the commissioners if you're interested.
And then I guess this is a fairly substantial project. And so is there is this something that would be good to communicate to the city at large? I mean, I guess, we have the planning commission that's part of the purpose is to at least give the public an opportunity to come and listen if they're so inclined, but otherwise, is there any kind of communication plan by the Seldovia Village Tribe about their project? Or I guess it seems like it might be an opportunity just to let people know what's going on and why and so forth. It might, just so that the community is aware of what might be happening. So I'm not sure how that fits in with regulations. I think it seems like it's how we communicate with each other as a community is important. And so it's just an opportunity for providing information. And so I'm just kind of asking what are people's thoughts or any plans for communication?
Yeah, so administratively, this is a building permit and per code and
Mhm.
regulation, that's done administratively with one member of the commission signing
Right.
off on it. So it goes kind of back to that. There used to be a public process, I think it was prior to 2008,
Mhm.
where building permits were held publicly in a planning commission meeting for approval. And I think that some communities probably still do that.
Mhm.
So, I think this administration really strives on consistency and fairness and treating
Mhm.
everybody equally and knowing that some projects are bigger than others. I think comes back to, well, then maybe this wouldn't be an adverse impact to neighboring properties because it is private property and they're the surrounding property owners, but maybe new construction projects, new house, we've heard people have interest in new development in the community, not just this, but even in residential homes. And I've had a few members of the public actually request that there be a public process in place. So if that's something that the commission wanted to explore, then maybe it's not just the projects that have potential adverse impacts, but projects that are new construction or projects that are over such a square footage, or you'd have to decide what the threshold is for that to bring that public process back in place, or if there's a different format to facilitate that public process. But right now there is not one for building permits such as
So
this.
I guess in one sense, what you were talking about, posting things on the website is one way of providing that information. So it is available to the public in a fairly straightforward, like if you're interested in finding out about building permits or projects that are underway in our community, that's a place you can go to find information. And I guess we as commissioners can, once that's up, then we can just say, if you're interested in finding out about the building permits that are underway, you can go here and you can look at it and see what it is. And that way, at least it kind of goes back to your transparency.
That's a great suggestion. And people can always come and view, they are a public record. People can always come and view them at the city office. And we do have individuals, that request to come in and see
Okay.
who has a building permit or what those are. So.
Any other comments from the commissioners? And then, so I guess we'll continue forward with item J, informational items not requiring actions. Anything?
I'm sorry, Chair Sweet, if I could just comment on the number 2 under staff reports, the commercial business subcommittee.
Oh,
update.
sorry.
Yeah, I
Sure.
think I skipped over that, but yeah, I just want to let you know that we did a poll of the subcommittee and I talked to Chair Sweet about this, but the first one will be on September 20th, Wednesday at 6 p.m. And so the plan is to meet Wednesdays if the subcommittee then decides to keep going with that twice a month. And at the first meeting, we'll elect the subcommittee will elect their chair. And I'm not sure if there's any more comments you want to make on that, but I just wanted to let everybody know that that's where the status of it was.
And I think what my plan was to so the chair of the planning commission is an ex officio non-voting member of the subcommittee, and so my role will be to work with the subcommittee to begin with, just to identify what the kind of structure is for the discussions for it'll be, I think, a 6-month endeavor, meeting twice a month. And I think so. And so to make sure that people kind of understand what the outcome is for, so that they're providing input into what their expectations are for the outcome of that subcommittee. But to also make sure that everyone feels like they're in a safe environment and that they can provide their feedback. And then from that point, the subcommittee may elect to have, there might be a need for a minority and a majority opinion if that's kind of what happens, but it's just to make sure that everybody that's participating feels safe, that they can provide whatever feedback they have, and that and then at the end of it, check in to make sure that everything that was sort of planned out for that has either been met, or it might need to be dealt with by somebody else, but to at least capture what it is that people wanted out of this. So that's kind of just the sort of big picture part of it. And then that group will bring their recommendations back to the planning commission, and then then we as a group will go over that and then provide feedback to the city council for their action. So and then Allison will be the representative on that from the commission, and then Vivian is the representative from the city council who will be on the subcommittee. So does anybody have any questions or any feedback on that?
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to the process.
And then, so then we'll just kind of go back to the remainder of the agenda. So informational items not requiring action. Do we have any? I just again checking in to see any
Yes.
members of the public.
No members of the public, but just under informational items, I just want to remind everybody that the City of Seldovia municipal elections are going to be October 3rd. Absentee voting in person at the city office will start on the 18th. And absentee ballot applications can be picked up at the city office and filled out and returned, or they're available to download online for people that are going to be out of town. Just a friendly reminder.
And then we have no members of the public to provide comments. Any comments from the commission?
It's been a pretty informational session, I think, so maybe learn some stuff.
Thank you. Commissioner Kroll, any feedback? And then the next, our next meeting is on October 4th, 2023. And so with that,
Look for a motion to adjourn from somebody.
can I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I move to adjourn.
And a second?
I second it.
And if I remember correctly, we're done, right? Okay, so we are complete at 6:56 PM. Thank you very much.